Welcome to the Master Your Breath podcast. My name is Tom Richter, I'm your host, and I welcome you to today's episode, where I will be talking about how to approach breathwork, how to approach pranayama, or any attempt to improve your breathing. Before we start with the content, I invite you to check your posture. Are you sitting upright? Could you broaden and relax your shoulders a little more? Can you freely move your neck and reach through your fingers? Can you inhale, expanding your upper belly, and as you exhale, relax your face? Maybe even put a subtle smile on your lips. And then just continue breathing in a calm way and see how that feels. The reason why I do that is because I want you to enjoy the next couple of minutes while you're listening to me. And of course, I will do my best to provide information, to maybe even inspire you to focus on your breathing a little bit, or give you the impulse to do something for yourself afterwards. But the idea that I can provide is only half of what works. The other half has to come from your side, which means if you are in a relaxed place, you will be more likely to actually openly hear what I have to say, and will also be more likely to feel that urge to actually put it into action. Apart from that, I also want to make this podcast so that you, the listener, can get actionable content. Not just listen along, hear an interesting idea, and then just forget about it the next moment, but really put it into action. Because only what we put into action will make something unconscious become conscious, will create a skill, will create a new habit or a new pattern, and that then creates a new habit, which will eventually transform our lives. Now with breathing is something we are all aware of, but at the same time, we don't really pay attention to it. We all breathe 24 hours, and we all know that if we would stop breathing within minutes, we would die. But have you thought about how many times a day you actually breathe? Now, sometimes you will hear numbers like 25,000 breaths that we all take every day. And I find those numbers quite high. If we think about it, 6 breaths per minute, and that is admittedly a very calm way of breathing, would add up to 8,640 breaths per day if you would just continue breathing 6 breaths a minute. 10 breaths per minute would add up to 14,400 breaths per day. 15 breaths per minute, 21,600 breaths per day, and 20 breaths per minute, and that, if you think 60 seconds, 20 per minute, that is quite a fast, almost panting kind of way of breathing. So I would suggest most of us are between 12 and 15,000 breaths maybe a little more, but in general we can say most of us breathe too much, take too many breaths. Too much in the sense that fast, shallow, irregular breathing will have an effect on your whole body. It will affect your mental state and your emotional state. The faster you breathe, and also all the other characteristics of your breathing, the quality of your breathing, will affect every process in your body. And that's what we're talking about. Yes, we are aware that we have to breathe to survive, but the quality of our breath really makes the difference between being calm, responsive, able to think before acting, versus being in a fight or flight state where it's all about reacting without thinking much. Now, what are some of the things that our breathing affects? Our breathing affects our nervous state. It immediately taps into the nervous system and regulates if we feel safe, if we feel calm, etc. It directly affects our heart rate, our blood pressure. It actually helps the heart pump blood through our body in various ways, which we will get into as the episodes come along. It definitely affects our emotional state. Just think if you are in a place where you want to not feel a certain emotion that comes up. Let's say you are watching a movie, you really feel like crying, but you're around a group of people that you don't want to cry in front of. So what do? You hold your breath, and therefore you can stop the tears from coming. Versus if you are in that place of wanting to cry, and now I tell you, just take a couple of calm, fuller breaths. There's no way you can stop those emotions now of coming out and the tears pouring out. But it also affects our pH level of our body. It affects how much muscle strength we can execute in any moment. It affects our recovery rate, how long our body takes to recover from a workout, but also from just stress in general. It affects our pain tolerance. The way we breathe really makes a difference whether we feel a pain is intolerable or, oh, it's not that bad. It also affects our bone alignment and body growth, especially if we think about how do you breathe over years and years. It affects our digestion in many ways, but again, just think of the diaphragm. Every time as you inhale, as the diaphragm descends into your abdominal cavity, it massages all the internal organs, including your intestine and all your digestive organs. It affects how much endurance and conditioning you have available. So again, sports, fitness is very strongly connected to how you breathe. Yet, we rarely talk about the quality of our breathing when we try to deal with any of these things. Maybe there's a little bit, when you go to a trainer and want to improve whatever sport you're doing, and there's a little bit of, watch your breathing, breathe a little calmer. But it's very general suggestions. It's not, let's use the breath intentionally to feel more calm, to manage the stress, to recover faster, to improve your endurance, to improve the state of your health in any way. Even food cravings are strongly connected to the way we breathe. And of course, with all the things that I've said so far, also how clear your mind is, how your brain functions, how you feel in harmony with yourself, how you feel balanced, again, plays a big role how you're breathing for all these things. And again, in this podcast, I will go into all these things in more detail. I just wanted to give you really a rough summary in this podcast. Now, as you are listening to this podcast, I assume you have heard about breathwork, you have heard about different approaches to improving your breathing, or how different techniques allow you to manage certain situations in a better way. So maybe you have heard about 4-7-8 breathing, where you inhale for 4 seconds, hold the breath for 7 seconds, exhale for 8 seconds. Maybe you have heard about the Wim Hof method, or you have heard about breathing as a spiritual practice, pranayama practices. Maybe alternate nostril breathing rings a bell. Now, all these techniques have their place and they are great. I use some of them myself. But what I also see in the world of Instagram, in the world of social media, where it's all about, what can you transmit within 30 seconds, within one reel, those techniques get hyped up, and then it's just about that one technique. The problem behind that now is that if we take 2 steps back and we breathe all day long, 20,000, 15,000 breaths a day, and even though breathing affects all these different areas that I have been talking about, also all these areas affect our breathing. So, for example, if you are in a stressful moment, your body will automatically start breathing faster just by being exposed to a stressor. Now, if you would be in a natural environment and there would be an actual physical danger, the metaphorical lion chasing you, and now you would breathe faster, and that would get you ready to actually run away or get into a fight, into a physical fight, to defend yourself. The fast breathing would be great. It would be great because it would actually prepare you for that next moment of sprinting, of running like crazy for your life. And then you would calm down again. In modern life, what happens is that we get a stress trigger that might be an email, a message, a conversation that you have with a colleague or a loved one, or a car cutting you off on the street. A simple thought of some situation that creates stress inside of you. And you're not running away after that. You're not physically engaging after that. But rather you stay with that faster pace of breathing now. And that stressful situation continues. Or after 5 minutes, you get the next message that contains a stressful trigger, or an email, or a conversation at work. So throughout the day, we continuously get stress triggers, and our breathing adjusts to that, gets you ready, but then there's no physical engagement in terms of running away or getting into a fight. And so our body cannot get out of that prepared situation to actually get physical. And so it gets used to just breathing fast. And there's a couple of things that happen when you routinely breathe a little faster than metabolically needed. But through the chronic stressors that we experience, our breathing chronically gets fast-paced. And that might create, and in many ways does, affect the way we hold pressure in our abdominal region, over-tensioning our abdominal muscles. We might start breathing more shallowly. We might start breathing faster. We might start engaging neck muscles, shoulder muscles, chest muscles in order to maintain that way of breathing. And then it becomes this vicious cycle where through the fast breathing, we feel more stressed. And through the stress triggers that we experience throughout the day, our breathing stays fast. And so now we cannot get out of it. Now, coming back to what I said about breath work, about those techniques that make sense but are very simplified. If I overbreathe throughout the day, without even noticing it, without being conscious about it, if I breathe high up in the chest, not using my diaphragm as it's supposed to be used, if I'm carrying a lot of stress in my abdominal area, not allowing the belly to expand as I breathe in, I will take that breathing pattern that I have established as a habit throughout every day, day by day, and take it into that technique that I'm now using. So I'm taking the chest breathing and now I'm doing 4-7-8 breathing. Or I'm taking that way of breathing shallowly and now I'm doing Wim Hof breathing. I'm taking all the tension in my belly and now I'm doing alternate nostril breathing with that. I might still get some benefit from it, But it would be much better if I would actually learn to change that pattern. If I would learn some principles that allow me to optimize my breathing and then use that new way of breathing, those new breathing patterns, and establish them throughout the day. And that's why when I teach people, whether it is in my yoga classes, whether it is in my breathing courses, I first start with optimizing the breathing patterns that they already have. Because any technique I add after that will be based on those new optimized breathing patterns. And those principles can then also be applied to every situation, whether you're doing sports, whether you're sitting in the office, whether you are driving your car, whether you're sitting at home on the couch and reading a book or watching TV, whether you're cooking, whether you are having a nice conversation with your friends. In all these situations, you can use those improved breathing patterns. Some of them might seem obvious enough. Let's say, open your posture, have a joyful, relaxed posture with a long, elevated spine, and somewhat relaxed belly, a free neck reaching through your fingers, relaxed face, subtle smile on your lips, tongue sucked up to the upper palate behind your front teeth. There's a couple of more ideas how to align yourself, but this is an alignment that you can always find in whatever you're doing. Another thing might be breathe diaphragmatically. And in 90% of your day, it's completely enough to breathe only diaphragmatically. There's no need to move your chest. There's no need to engage your shoulders or shorten your neck in order to breathe. Also, when you breathe diaphragmatically, the inhalation is active and the exhalation is simply allowing the breath to come out by itself. There's no engagement. There's no pressing the out. You're always breathing through your nose. You're always breathing in a nice rhythm that is based on whatever you're doing. And of course, the rhythm might change if you're sitting on the couch versus going for a jog or sitting in the car or giving a talk. But there is a rhythm behind what you're doing. And then, breathing slowly, breathing in a relaxed way. So those principles you can always use. And if you establish those patterns, then you're not just using one trick, one technique, but you're actually transforming your whole experience of life, emotionally, mentally, physically, because this new way of breathing, the new pattern, will sneak into your calmness, your engagement, your mental clarity, your focus, your food cravings, all the things we talked about before. And along with that change of breathing patterns, which is, you could call it one pillar of how I work with people, improving your breathing patterns in everyday life, you could now say, well, okay, now maybe you have a lot of tension in your abdominal area, you have a lot of tension in your upper body, around your neck. This, of course, again, affects your breathing, but it also affects the openness of your airways. It affects your nervous system directly, because all those nerves are working better if you're in a relaxed place than if they're already in that tense state. And so I teach a couple of yogic kriya techniques which help you to get fine control over all your abdominal muscles, all the muscles around your chest, neck, throat, and they have a very deep reaching effect. Imagine walking through life with a t-shirt that is just really tight. You would consistently breathe a little more, less openly. You would have to create counter tension, etc. So now think that extra tight t-shirt is actually your muscles around your upper body, which just are a little over tense, simply because the way we live, essentially everybody has too much tension in those muscles. And so by releasing that tension through yogic techniques, we now add to that amazing effect of breathing in a better pattern throughout the day. And then lastly, now you can say, okay, well, if I add a breathing practice where I sit for 5 minutes in the morning, and now I have a particular technique that I'm using on top of all these patterns, on top of having released the tension from all the muscles that are just holding on too much without me even noticing. Now I can train those optimal patterns and challenge it. Just like when you are moving nicely and now you do weight training or you do gymnastics, now you can challenge that way of optimal movement principles. And in the same way, when you breathe optimally in a great pattern throughout the day, and now you challenge that by, for example, adding a ratio of breathing in for 5, out for 10. Well, if you can do that, can you breathe in for 8 and out for 16? Can you breathe in for 15, out for 30? And maybe you can immediately do that. Then we can go to the next step. But you can then improve on those already optimized breathing patterns by challenging them in a breathing practice. And in that way, you are not just getting one technique that you try to kind of push into the patterns that are already not optimal, but rather have a step-by-step approach. And so that is my Master Your Breath approach. And the point here is all the approaches out there, they make sense, but it needs a broad approach that incorporates all these principles, all these pillars of breathing to really make a huge transformation happen as quickly as possible. And so the great thing about this approach is also that it doesn't involve a lot of time commitment. So, because essentially 5 to 10 minutes of breath work in the morning plus the breathing patterns that you anyway have throughout the day, it just takes some awareness, is essentially enough to really transform ourselves on a deep level, because breathing is that foundational element that affects our movement, our emotions, our mental state, and all the other things I talked about. And so, how should you approach breathwork, breathing? Well, if you have no time whatsoever and you don't want to even bother right now, then just listen to the next episode where I will guide you through a breath snack and talk a little bit why this might actually already solve so many things for you. And if you have even less time, just again, sit up a little bit, root down through your sit bones and exhale. Check your belly is relaxed. Now with the inhalation, open your heart space, broaden your shoulders, reach through your fingers, and as you exhale, let the air out passively. With the inhalation, reach the top of your head up towards the ceiling, and as you exhale passively, relax your face and soften your lips. Subtle smile, barely noticeable to the outside. And check, can you breathe in to the upper belly, and can you breathe out, simply releasing the breath, not pressing it out, not pushing the air out. Breathe in again. Exhale. Pause for a moment. Again, inhale. Exhale. And just check how you feel right now. How does it feel to breathe in that way? And if that feels good, just see if you can come back to that exact same thing and repeat it. And that took maybe now 30, 40 seconds throughout the day again and again. And if you want to know more about it, again, check out the next episode where I will be talking about breath snacks, because you essentially just did one, a very short version of it. With that, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you will have I actually wish you a wonderful day, and keep staying aware of the way you breathe, the quality of your breathing. Let those words that you just heard from me sink in a little bit. And if you have any question on Spotify, there's the option of writing it down so I can collect some questions and make episodes based on them.